The Caribbean Sea, usually a picture of turquoise tranquility and leisure, began to transform into a theater of high-stakes war intenseness in late 2025. This wasn't a sudden event, but a calculated accumulation of power, fundamentally, a scheme often referred to by war machine analysts as force concentration. Look, the objective was open yet shrouded in the complexities of international diplomacy and shadow warfare. The removal of Venezuela's leadership. The operation, which would later be known to the universe under the code names Operation Southern Spear, for the build-up and Operation Absolute Resolve for the strike, allegedly began with the silent motility of massive naval assets. The United States Navy, operating under the guise of counter-narcotics patrols, began to encircle the northern coast of South America. This wasn't just a few patrol boats. Reports indicate that the deployment included the USS Gerald R. Ford Toter Work Stoppage Group and the USS Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group. These float cities are capable of projecting powerfulness far beyond the horizon, serving as mobile air bases and dictation centers that can operate without needing permission from neighboring countries. The strategy relied heavily on the psychological impact of this brand ring. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the newest and most advanced aircraft carrier in the U.S. fleet, allegedly brought with it a squadron of F-35C Lightning stealth fighters. Frankly, these jets significant because they're fifth-generation fighters, meaning they're contrived to be invisible to foe radar. Clearly, in previous conflicts, like the initial days of the intrusion of Iraq, air high quality was established by destroying foeman radio detection and ranging. In this alleged Venezuelan operation, the strategy evolved. The F-35s could reportedly fly inside Venezuelan airspace without being detected, gathering intelligence service on the location of mobile air defense scheme like the Russian-made S-300AM and Buk M2 batteries that Venezuela had purchased years prior. Now, here's where it gets good. In fact, this game of cat and mouse was critical. If the Venezuelan military turned on their radars to lead the U.S. ships, the F-35s would instantly map their location. If they kept them off, they were blind. Now, here's where it gets good. Alongside the Toter Group, the waters allegedly teamed with Arleigh Burke-class destroyer equipped with the Aegis combat system. This system is a sophisticated network of computers that can track and destroy hundreds of targets simultaneously. In the context of this operation, the Aegis ship likely created a no-fly zone bubble around the operation area, ensuring that no Venezuelan aircraft could take off to stop the incoming forces without being straightaway targeted. This naval blockade to function a secondary purpose, slip off any potential escape routes by sea. Plus, the operational strategy here mirrors the Anaconda strategy utilized in other conflicts, where a quarry is slowly squeezed and isolated before the final work stoppage. The destroyers, besides, reportedly carried Tomahawk cruise missile, open of hitting land targets with pinpoint accuracy from hundreds of statmi away, a capability famously demonstrated during the opening strikes of the Gulf War and more recently in strike on Syrian airfields. A silent war was allegedly being fought in the digital realm, while the visible power of the Navy Blue drew all the attention. Cyber warfare unit, likely operate from procure facilities in the United States or aboard the dictation ships, initiated a campaign to blind the Venezuelan leadership. Often, this aspect of the scheme involves targeting the bidding and control infrastructure, the internet cables, war machine communication networks, and even the electrical grid. Reports from the night of the operation hint that the lights in Caracas were turned off remotely. This is consistent with modern U.S. doctrine, which prioritizes info dominance. By hacking into the SCADA systems, supervisory control and data acquisition, that manage the powerfulness power system, U.S. forces could plunge the city into darkness without dropping a single bomb. This tactic creates confusion and terror, actually masking the sound and movement of approaching helicopters. It's a digital version of the smoke screens utilized in Univer II battles, but far more effective and pervasive. As the date of the Aver capture approached, the sky of the Caribbean reportedly filled with unmanned assets. The MQ-9 Reaper drones, hunter-killers that can loiter in the sky for over 24 hours, were likely utilized to uphold a constant eye on the target's compound. What's more, these drones transport Hellfire missiles, the same weapon used to eliminate high-value targets in the Middle East, such as in the strike on Qasem Soleimani. That said, in this operation, their basic role was likely surveillance, beaming real-time, high-definition video back to commanders in the White House Situation Room. The reality is, naturally, when the target sleeps, eats, and moves, this persistent surveillance allows for a pattern of living analysis learning exactly. This data is important for collateral damage, ensuring that the strike happens exactly when the target is most vulnerable. Now, here's where it gets good. A new and terrorized addition to this alleged arsenal was the reported use of one-way attack drones or loitering munitions. Unlike traditional missiles, these drones can fly to a mark area and circle until they locate their particular prey, then crash into it. Without question, addition, this engineering, which has seen extensive use in the conflict in Ukraine by both sides, allows for a level of precision that make hiding nearly impossible. And here's the thing. In the Venezuelan scenario, these drones were allegedly used to target and neutralize the active radar dishes of the Venezuelan air defense systems just minutes before the briny assault force arrived. By destroying the eyes of the enemy defenses cheaply and effectively, the path was cleared for the more valuable and vulnerable manned aircraft. Sometimes, the logistical backbone of this operation cannot be overstated. The Boeing C-17 Globemaster Terther transport planes were likely shuttling equipment and staff office to staging bases in friendly Caribbean nations or U.S. territories like Puerto Rico. These monolithic aircraft can carry everything from M1 Abrams tanks to Inkinis Hawk helicopters. For this particular mission, they probably transported the elite Special Operations helicopter of the 160th Special Operations Air Power Regiment, known as the Night Stalkers. These pilots are the best in the world at flying low and fasting in total shadow using night vision GOP. Interestingly, they're the same unit that flew the Navy SEALs into Abbottabad, Pakistan, for the raid on Osama bin Laden. Participation is a hallmark of high-priority kill or capture missions. The operational strategy also allegedly employed electronic quiet war aircraft like the EA-18 Growler. These jets are designed not to shoot missiles, but to shoot wireless waves. They fly over enemy territory and jam radars and communications, filling the foeman's screens with static and false targets. In the chaos of the Caracas blackout, Growlers would have ensured that even if a Venezuelan soldier negotiate to turn on a radio or a radar, they would see nothing but digital noise. This capability was splendidly used during the NATO intervention in Libya to subdue air defense, permit coalition jet to work with impunity. In Venezuela, it ensured that the leading was deaf-dumb, clearly plus blind to the approaching seizure force. Another alleged component of the strategy was the use of diversionary maneuver. While the main force headed for the leadership's chemical compound, explosions were heard at military bases miles away, such as La Guaira and Fortuna. Study suggests that, look, these were probable targeted strikes using AGM-154 Joint Standoff Weapon, JSOW, glide bombs released from fighters miles away. Importantly, the purpose of these strikes was twofold: to degrade the military's ability to respond and to draw attention away from the real target. It's a classic military feint, used throughout history from the Trojan Horse to the D-Day landings in Normandy, where the Allies bombed Calais to trick the Germans to thinking the invasion would happen there. Honestly, by forcing the Venezuelan war machine to scramble towards burning base, the U.S. force allegedly created a clear corridor for the capture team. The tension in the years leading up to the operation would have been palpable. The U.S. administration reportedly engaged in a psychological operation campaign, issuing public warnings and indictments to increase the pressure on the Venezuelan leadership. This strategy is designed to induce paranoia and mistakes. When a leader feels hunted, they may move to secure locating, which, if the U.S. intelligence has already compromised it, actually makes them easier to catch. Notably, it was a digital and diplomatical siege, tightening the noose slowly until the moment of the work stoppage. The use of sonic weapon or similar non-lethal harassment devices was too rumored, aimed at disorienting personnel and lowering morale without firing a shot, a tactic reminiscent of the Havana Syndrome incidents, though weaponized for tactical vantage here. The naval support provided to the USS Iwo Jima was particularly critical for the seizure phase. So what does this mean? As an amphibious assault ship, it hosts Marines and, crucially, a flight deck for helicopters and MV-22 Ospreys. The Osprey is a tilt-rotor aircraft that takes off like a chopper but flies like a plane, gifted the speed to get in and out of hostile dominion quickly. Naturally, in the operation, the Osprey is likely stood by as the Quick Reaction Force (QRF), fixed to zoom in with reinforcements if the primary squad got pinned down. Look, the Iwo Jima essentially served as a floating piece of American soil just off the coast, providing a medical trauma center, a brig for detainees, and a command hub, all immune to the political complications of basing a force in a neighbor country. The climax of the operation, executed under the cover of a manufactured dim-out, was a masterclass in modern special operations warfare. While the naval assets and air power report in one set the stage, the actual capture fell to the lead operator on the ground. These were reportedly members of Delta Force, the U.S. Army's secretive counter-terrorism unit. Delta Force specializes in hostage rescue and high-value mark capture, having honed their skills in the dusty streets of Iraq and the mountains of Afghanistan. For the Venezuelan mission, they allegedly utilized MH-6 Little Bird helicopters. These small, agile helicopters are famous for their ability to land on narrow rooftops and in tight urban center streets. They're the sports cars of the helicopter world, often carrying operators on benches on the outside of the fuselage, allowing them to step off onto a mark instantly. This tactic was famously portrayed in the movie Inkinis Hawk Down, depicting the Battle of Mogadishu, where speed was life. The target was reported as a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas, complete with steel-reinforced walls and a dedicated safe way or panic bunker. But here's what's interesting. The operational challenge wasn't just get to the building, but getting interior before the quarry could lock himself in that bunker. To achieve this, the operator allegedly utilized specialized breaching tools. While Hollywood movies show soldiers kicking down doorway, real operations against fortified structures use a thermal breaching. This involves the use of exothermic cutting torches or offend pens that, pretty much, burn at thousands of degrees, slicing through steel hinges and deadbolts like butter. In this specific operation, reports mention the use of monolithic blowtorch open of slip through the safe room's defenses. This suggests the team was prepared for a siege within a siege, bringing heavy equipment that could defeat bank vault-level security. As the little birds and Blackhawks descended on the compound, the scheme of overwhelming force was applied to the immediate vicinity. Sniper team provided overwatch from the helicopters or adjacent rooftop using large-caliber rifles, ilk the Barrett M82. This weapon fires a 50-caliber bullet that can stop a vehicle engine or punch through a brick wall, ensuring that no armed guard could approach the breach team. Simultaneously, the A-30 gunship, a terrifying aircraft oftentimes called the Angel of Death, may have been circling high above. The AC-130 carries a howitzer cannon and Gatling guns, subject of raining down accurate firing to suppress any large-scale counterattack by the Venezuelan military. Its presence is a massive psychological deterrent. The sound of its engines alone is often enough to make foeman troops keep their heads down. The actual seizure sequence was described as a bum rush. This implies a dynamic entry where speed is prioritized over caution. The operator would have utilized flashbang grenades devices that create a blinding flash and a deafening bang to disorient everyone in the room. Indeed, this tactic is the brain's ability to process information for a few critical moments, giving the operators time to secure the room. In the Mirage to seizure Maduro, this speed was vital to prevent him from sealing the solid steel doorway of his safe room. Sometimes, difference between success and, failure was likely measured in second. If the door had closed, the squad would have been stuck trying to cut it open, while the entire Venezuelan army converged on their locating. Turn an operative raid into a drawn-out and dangerous siege. Once the target was secured, the exfiltration stage began. This is often the most dangerous part of any mission. On top of that, the squad now had to move a high-value prisoner who might be resisting back to the helicopters. The package, as high-value detainees are often called, was likely zip-tied and hooded immediately to forestall him from identifying the manipulator or signaling for help. Besides, the helicopters, which had likely elevate off to hover nearby to avoid being sitting ducks, would have swooped back in for the pickup. The 160th SOAR pilot are trained to perform dust-offs under fire, landing for only the few seconds needed to throw the squad and the captive on board. During the flying back to the USS Iwo, the convoy of helicopters would have been protected by the full weight of the U.S. air asset. F-22 Raptors, the air-to-air laterality fighters, were probably patrolling the skies above the flying path to shoot down any Venezuelan jets that managed to take off. At the end of the day, the F-22 is virtually invisible to radar and can engage targets from long distances, meaning Venezuelan pilots would have been shot down before they even knew they were in a fight. This air covert provided a sanitized corridor for the helicopters to travel safely from Caracas to the sea. Definitely, the use of electronic jamming continued during this phase to prevent the Venezuelan war machine from coordinating a pursuit or firing shoulder-launched anti-aircraft missiles. Manpads. Upon landing on the deck of the USS Iwo Jima, the operation shifted from a war machine to a legal and checkup one. The prisoner was reportedly checked by medical staff to ensure he was fit for travel and confinement. This is standard procedure to ensure the detainee survives to face trial. The ship, posing in international waters, acted as a mobile piece of U.S. district where federal agents, specifically the FBI's Surety Delivery Squad, ART, who reportedly accompanied the military, could formally arrest the target. The involvement of the FBI is notable because it signals that this was a law enforcement operation supported by the military, kinda than a pure assassination mission. This distinction is crucial for the legal arguments regarding narco-terrorism charges that followed. So, what does this mean? The weapon utilized by the individual operator were likely the HKK-416's assault rifle, a favorite of special operations units like Delta Force and SEAL Team 6. Notably, this rifle for its reliability in harsh conditions, and was the weapon used to killing bin load. It's often equipped with suppressors, silencers, holographic sights for fast aiming, and laser designators invisible to the naked eye, but seeable through night vision goggles. The operators also wear quad-nod dark vision goggle, GPNVDV-10, which panoramic 97-degree field of view, unlike the tunnel sight of older models. This engineering let them to see in near total shadow, giving them a massive advantage over guards using flashlights or standard dark vision. The aftermath of the operation saw the rapid rapid conveyance of the captured leadership to New York to face trial. Actually, this was likely done using a secure military conveyance sheet, perhaps a C-17 or a smaller, more discreet Gulfstream jet owned by the government. Basically, the fastness of this transfer was project to present the cosmos with a fait accompli and accomplished fact. In fact, by the time the sun rose and the blackout in Caracas lifted, the leader was already in U.S. custody thousands of miles away. Also, this prevents any contiguous diplomatic efforts to halt the extradition or negotiate his release. It's a strategy of shock and finality. The alleged nature of the weapons and tactics also includes reports of non-kinetic effects. Some sources speculated on the use of microwave weapons to disable vehicles or electronics without an explosion. Known as directed energy artillery, these systems can fry the circuits of a car or a truck, cause it to stop dead. The thing is, if a convoy had tried to intercept the U.S. forces, such a weapon could have stopped them without causing a bloodbath, aligning with the goal of a precise seizure rather than a massacre. This technology represents the cutting edge of modern warfare, where effects are achieved with invisible beams instead than bullets. In conclusion, the operation to capture Venezuela's leadership, as described in these reports, was a complex symphony of violence, engineering, and strategy. It combined the brute force of aircraft carriers with the surgical precision of Delta Force operator. It leveraged the invisible domains of cyber and electronic warfare to blind the enemy and utilize pass on aviation plus and vanish before a coherent defense could be mounted. Whether using blowtorches on steel doors or turning off the light of a capital city, the strategy was defined by its audacity and its reliance on overwhelming technological superiority. Honestly, it stands as a dramatic example of how Bodoni military powers project will across borders turn the alleged into the historical in the span of a single dark.